Gemini 6 Hawaii, Capcom, go.
Roger, we asked for another orbit for photography. There seems to be no reason to race off map.
Flight Hawaii.
Roger, Hawaii.
Another orbit on this rendezvous thing, and then separate.
After Gemini 5, manned flight progress hinged on the rendezvous flight of the first Agena target vehicle and the Gemini 6 spacecraft. Rendezvous techniques developed with Agena will help perfect the docking capability necessary for Apollo lunar missions. Thorough ground testing and a record of almost 90% success in nearly 200 launches of the parent Air Force Agena vehicle led to verification of the target vehicle without a flight test. The flight crews for GT-6 were announced in April. Walter Schirra will be the prime crew command pilot. Thomas Stafford will serve as prime crew pilot. Virgil Grissom and John Young will form the backup crew. Following de-erection, the vehicle underwent a detailed systems inspection and buy-off. In May, it was packaged and shipped to Cape Kennedy to await an October launch. In April, the Gemini 6 launch vehicle was erected in the vertical test facility at Martin, Baltimore. The event marked the first time the test facility had been used to its full capacity for handling 2 launch vehicles at one time. The companion vehicle, GLV-5, completed testing in early May. GLV-6 was scheduled for test completion and shipment to the Cape in late July, continuing uninterrupted hardware delivery in support of an anticipated 60-day Gemini launch schedule.
Not much has changed since we initially looked at the GTA-6 mission, other than the fact that we are trained to the point where we're aware of what the mission really represents. The rendezvous that is scheduled for this mission, of course, consists of the Agena launched on the Atlas from Pad 14 and the Gemini spacecraft 6 launched on a Titan II from Pad 19. If the Agena goes into a good orbit, one that we can handle with both Agena fuel and Gemini propulsion fuel, we will launch the Gemini one orbit behind the Agena.
Mission start. T0. There she goes.
The Atlas Agena target vehicle was launched from Cape Kennedy on October 25th. Although the Atlas performed perfectly, the Agena malfunctioned and failed to achieve orbit. It is believed that a hard start or backfire induced by a modified engine start sequence led to rupturing of the hypergolic propellant tanks. This would have caused the vehicle to explode. Top priority has been given to modifying the remaining 5 target vehicles to ensure their performance on the final Gemini missions. Loss of the target vehicle canceled the Gemini 6 mission. Astronauts Walter Schirra and Thomas Stafford were to have rendezvoused and docked their spacecraft with the target vehicle. To offset a threatened program delay, NASA instituted a series of rapid schedule and mission revisions. Gemini 6 was de-erected, and Gemini 7 was erected in its place. Frank Borman and James Lovell, wearing the new lightweight pressure suits, were the flight crew for Gemini 7. The suit was given its first practical test during a spacecraft altitude checkout.
Basically, this lightweight suit offers greater mobility and comfort for the crew, which will fly 14 days in space. However, It offers the same protection in any emergency as the standard suit. During the flight of Gemini 7, the crew will remove their lightweight spacesuit and fly in their underwear.
Primary mission of the flight to evaluate the capabilities of the flight crew and spacecraft during 14 days of weightless flight. The spacecraft would also serve as a target vehicle for Gemini 6.
Gemini 7 is basically a medical mission. It's the culmination of our efforts to increase or double man's exposure to the spaceflight environment, ending with a 14-day manned space flight. There were three principal problems left following our 4- and 8-day flights. These were the ability to sleep in a spaceflight environment. Secondly, the response of the heart and blood vessels to the readaptation to the ground-based or 1G environment after being weightless. And lastly, the reduction or decrease in the number of red blood cells that is observed following space flight.
Jim Lovell did comment, but he was looking forward to a good long flight. Attending the breakfast with astronauts Borman and Lovell with Wally Schirra and Tom Stafford, pilots for the Gemini 6 mission, which will be scheduled some 9 days after the Gemini 7 liftoff. The prime pilots for the Gemini 7 mission, Frank Borman and Jim Lovell, have arrived at Launch Complex 19. They're in their lightweight suits. They have their helmets attached.
Confidence in the launch team was a well-established fact. These elements shaped a real challenge. Launched GT-7 and within 14 days launched the delayed GT-6 astronauts from the same pad to effect a close-in orbital rendezvous. GT-7, the first leg of the ambitious double Gemini mission, was launched on December 4th.
T-minus 1 minute and counting. The launch vehicle, first stage engines will ignite and build up some 430,000 pounds of thrust. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Coming up on 2 minutes. Mark 2 minutes. Our velocity is 3,600 miles per hour. The crew reports their go for staging, which should occur in a very few seconds.
Okay, VC, stand by for staging. Roger, staging. You see that staging?
Right.
Look at the moon, Jim. Right.
We're standing by for 0.8, which is the achievement of 80% of the desired velocity, to put this 8,000-pound spacecraft into orbit.
0.8, V over VR. Right down the slot, Gemini 7.
Our initial orbit was 87 by 177 nautical miles. This was very close to what we'd hoped for. As a matter of fact, I think that our launch vehicle was closer to nominal than any other one that's been fired. After insertion, we turned around and thrusted back toward our second stage.
Borman reports he has the booster in sight.
There she is.
And then we station kept or remained with the booster. Actually, we were about 60 feet away from it for around 20 minutes. About 22 minutes into the flight, we thrusted away from our second stage and then got down to the business of a 14-day long-duration flight.
Now the next film that you see are the film that we took of a Polaris launch, and there it comes. This was quite an impressive sight. We saw the Polaris pop right out of the Atlantic at exactly the point it was supposed to be, and we were able to track it very well. I might add that this Polaris was fired by the submarine Benjamin Franklin. It was the first time they'd ever fired a Polaris, and they were able to do it at the exact second it was programmed. And now you see as it starts to fade in as it's silhouetted against the clouds.
We had about 20 experiments to perform in the 2 weeks ahead, but we, of course, had to check our new suits out, and we did regular medical checkups with the surgeons on the ground.
It's always taken about 9 weeks, or 63 days of actual work to clean up the pad, erect the booster, make the spacecraft, and check out the systems. We studied the problems, we found solutions, we streamlined the work effort, and within a couple of days, the whole atmosphere improved. With the planned 14-day flight, this gave us some margin, and the whole plan now appeared practical.
A7, Houston, Capcom. This is Gemini 7, read you loud and clear.
Good morning, Flight.
How's breakfast going?
Excellent. My compliments to the chef.
How is the suit configuration working out? We heard some comments over Carnarvon.
The suit configuration is working out very well. I'm out of the suit now. I got slightly cool last night while I was sleeping, however, I'm fine right now.
Gemini Control here. During the next pass across the United States, the Gemini 7 crew will be given a go for a 61-1 flight. The 61 would be the start of the 61st revolution. The 1 refers to the Western Atlantic landing area, which is the prime landing area.
The spacecraft is over the Caribbean, and Lovell is talking to Dr. Berry. Let's cut in there.
Okay, could we have your sleep report?
Roger. Both of us slept 6 to 7 hours last night. Probably woke 2 or 3 times during the night.
Do you think you're sleeping better now than you were the last couple of nights?
The first night was pretty poor, as you can probably guess. But we both needed a good sleep the second night, and we've been sleeping that way every time.
Very good.
A7, Houston.
Go ahead, Houston. This is Gemini 7.
This is Houston Flight. How long have you been up there now?
Let's see, it's 139 hours, 5 minutes, 14 and a half seconds.
Okay, that's the lot.
I feel like I was born up here.
Be advised that the count's going very well at the Cape on Gemini 6. The crew's up and healthy, and we're all ready to go.
Gemini 7.
Your go for 119-1.
Thank you, Ed.
Within 24 hours after Gemini 7 was launched, Gemini 6 was erected at Launch Complex 19. 8 days after Gemini 7 left the pad, Gemini 6 was ready for launch, completing a record pad turnaround 1 day ahead of schedule. On December 12th, the countdown for Gemini 6 reached 0.
The word from the Cape is, we are go. They are go aboard Gemini 7 as they make their silent sweeps around the world on their 111th revolution.
The prime pilots for the Gemini 6 flight, Wally Schirra and Tom Stafford, are now on their way to Launch Complex 19 to board their spacecraft. T-minus 48, and all still going well with our Gemini 6 countdown here at Launch Complex 19. We've gone through a complete checklist once again, and we are counting.
2 to go. Go ahead.
We will have ignition at 0, and some 3 seconds after ignition, the launch vehicle will lift off on the start of the Gemini 6 flight.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. Shut down, Gemini 6. Flight broadcast started. Verify program reset. Oxidize fuel pressure is low. Cloud falling. Roger, Gemini 6, monitoring tank pressures. The oxidizer pressure's down to about 30.
The engines ignited. Burn for almost 1.5 seconds and shut down. A pull-away checkout plug had prematurely dropped from the vehicle, causing engine shutdown.
This was a rough one for us. We'd been trained sufficiently, but this was different than any simulation we ever had. It did prove that man is still better programmed than any computer.
It was a great disappointment. We'd made 2 attempts to launch and still no liftoff.
Gemini 7, Houston, do you still read us? Sorry to disturb your lunch, but we have a message here we think you'd be interested in. We're coming up on a special time here, about 5 seconds. Mark, you have just exceeded the world's manned space flight endurance record.
3 days later, astronauts Schirra and Stafford again entered the Gemini 6 spacecraft.
At the present time, T-minus 20. T-minus 15. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition.
Engines start. We have a liftoff. Seconds after the hour. Flight dynamics says the trajectory looks very good. Goal program complete, Schirra says. Guidance says we've got proper roll and pitch. Dynamics and surgeon are both happy. Two minutes, 25 seconds. We've got staging. Schirra, call it. The thrust looks good on stage 2.
You can see it falling and turning on mine.
Banana Reeves has telemetry acquisition.
Banana Reeves, go prime, Gemini 6. Repeat, Gemini 6.
Roger.
Warming up sun, about 30 seconds, we'll give it 2 minutes for our switch in.
Go ahead, 6.
Right, the first few kick out very low, maybe no change in order.
Say again, 6, you're weak and a little bit garbled.
Roger, both primary and secondary scanners are working very well.
Understand both primary and secondary scanners are looking good.
The first maneuver will be a height adjustment required due to a 7 foot per second underspeed at insertion. Gemini 6's actual apogee altitude is 140 nautical miles. The required apogee altitude is 146 nautical miles. To correct this condition, the command pilot will perform a height adjustment maneuver at the end of the first orbit using his aft-flying thrusters. Gemini 7 is now here in a 161 nautical mile circular orbit. Gemini 6 is now here 560 miles behind Gemini 7 in an orbit having an apogee of 146 nautical miles and a perigee of 87 nautical miles. In this present orbit, Gemini 6 would catch up with Gemini 7 in approximately 2 hours. To allow the rendezvous to occur as planned, the catch-up rate will be slowed by 2 maneuvers. The first maneuver will be at second apogee, applied in a posigrade direction to raise the perigee to 117 nautical miles. We cannot expect both spacecraft to be in exactly the same orbital plane. Therefore, at 2 hours and 42 minutes after liftoff, Gemini 6 command pilot Lovell Jr. will yaw his spacecraft to the south and execute a plane change maneuver that will place his spacecraft exactly in the same orbit with Gemini 7. Both spacecraft are now in the same orbital plane. Gemini 6, for the second time, will apply thrust at apogee to circularize his orbit at 146 nautical miles and to also slow his catch-up rate. At this point in time, Gemini 6 will be 15 miles below Gemini 7 and 140 miles behind. By this point in time, Gemini 6 should be within radar contact of Gemini 7. When the slant range distance between Gemini 6 and Gemini 7 has been reduced to approximately 32 nautical miles, Gemini 6 will initiate the first of a series of terminal phase maneuvers. These maneuvers are accomplished by the command pilot placing the nose of his spacecraft at his target, Gemini 7, and thrusting along the line of sight. There will be 2 mid-course correction maneuvers, probably here and here. These maneuvers will place him on a trajectory that will be slightly below and in front of Gemini 7. At this point, he will perform a velocity match or braking maneuver that will bring about rendezvous. When he has completely matched the velocity of Gemini 7, he will station keep for several orbits. However, he will not dock.
Rendezvous was accomplished approximately 6 hours after the launch of Gemini 6.
Rendezvous and docking are most essential to complete the Apollo lunar mission. Now, on this mission with Gemini 7, we in 6 came within about a foot of Gemini 7. Shortly after that, Gemini 7 maintained station on us as well. But rendezvous and docking are feasible for manned crews.
Had there been a docking ring on either spacecraft, a physical link-up would have been possible.
After we completed the rendezvous maneuver, we maintained formation, actually we were station keeping, for a period of about 5.5 hours. Now this included an in-plane fly-around maneuver and an out-of-plane fly-around maneuver.
Let us start your plane fly around right now. All right, we'll be standing by. Roger, starting with about 46% propellant quantity. Say again, your prop quantity, 46%? That's correct. Oh, okay, thank you. And Hawaii for your information. 7 is terminating here with about 11%. Thank you, 7.
During this period of time, each of us controlled spacecraft 6 for approximately 50% of the maneuvers.
Gemini 7, this is 6. If you could hold it in yaw for just a little while, we'll try to get in real close and get all these close shots of you. Gemini 6, Hawaii, Capcom. Doing all right? How you doing? Very good. We're getting a whole batch of movies this morning. That's great. I'm glad to see those. We're showing you go here on the ground, and I've got a set maneuver update when you're ready to copy. Okay, stand by. Hawaii, Capcom, Gemini 6. Gemini 6, Hawaii, Capcom, go. Roger, we asked for another orbit for photography. There seems to be no reason to race off map. Flight away.
Roger, Hawaii.
Another orbit on this rendezvous thing, and then separate.
Okay, we concur.
Okay, I'll scrub the set maneuver.
Roger. We didn't understand his request over Tenerife then.
Oh, okay, very good. Gemini 6, Hawaii. Go ahead. All that I just gave you, you can scrub it out. They're giving you a go for another rev. Very good. We have about 41% fuel remaining, over. Roger, I copy that.
Roger, we'd like spacecraft 7 to give us a relative humidity at the suit outlet hoses.
Okay. Gemini 6, CSQ Capcom. CSQ, Gemini 6, go. Roger, we'd like for you to observe 7 on this road procedure and let us know if you see any water coming out of 7. Roger, we're observing and moving, and Roger. Roger, we're venting now. I can see us venting something. We saw one flake that time, Brian. There's a whole lot coming by right by my side. Probably the sun's not right for you, Wally. Oh, I see something now, yeah. Is that your water ball? I guess so. Yeah, I see it now. So 7 frequency, lots of flecks of water coming out all over the dark unit. Thank you. Good to stop the rollway, Wally. Okay, we're set. I hope he had his movie camera on at 6. Be the first acrobatic stunt in space.
Yep. You know, you guys are becoming famous.
For what, flight?
Say again?
For what, flight?
For rendezvousing and doing all these good things.
Yeah.
Right now, 6 is about 10 feet above and to the left of 7. We're just flying nose to nose, approximately 15 feet apart.
Gemini 7, are you able to see in the windows of 6 very easily and vice versa?
Roger, 7 here.
Wally Schirra fired his forward thrusters of spacecraft Gemini 6. This means that Gemini 6 will now move ahead of the Gemini 7 at a rate of approximately 24 nautical miles per revolution.
We separated from Gemini 7 at 6 p.m. Cape time. This was performed by a 9 feet per second retrograde maneuver. We separated to a distance of approximately 20 miles and performed experiments for the next 2 orbits.
The Gemini 6, RKV Capcom. Go, RKV. Roger, separation, burn, go. Right on, Roger. Wally says he's out to about 0.68 miles. He performed the set burn, 9 feet per second. The burn is going real well, Flight.
Finally, we collapsed, or should I say went into a deep sleep at 9 p.m. Cape time, having been up since 4 a.m. that morning.
Gemini 6 re-entered December 16th.
We had a retrofire and had a re-entry and came to the carrier. Now, the only thing that was different is, having done this once before, I thought I'd like to try it again. We brought our spacecraft back with us, and if there's a disparity in where we landed, at least we can say we came to the carrier with our spacecraft.
He's raising the hatch over the command pilot. Captain Schirra has his hand up, shaking hands with Dick Suka, with Howard Minners.
It was really a treat to come back aboard in style on number 3 elevator. To have the realization that to accomplish a lunar mission, we had to prove endurance, and we're still proving it now, and to effect rendezvous. Rendezvous is so important to bring our men back from the surface of the moon and back to the Earth, and I hope also to number 3 elevator.
Gemini 7 followed on December 18th.
Gemini 7, this is Air Boss 1. I have you in sight on the chute. Looks real good. Roger, thank you. Boss 1, Western Lena, give us a mark on Splash. That's a Brownie mark Splash on your mark Splash. I have him in sight.
We'd been in the water about 10 minutes when we saw a Navy frogman's face in the right window. He plugged in his interphone, and his first words were, "Merry Christmas."
This is 12-2. One of the astronauts, it appears to be astronaut Borman, has climbed out of the spacecraft and is in the life raft.
The recovery forces were quite fast, and I believe in about 26 minutes from splashdown, we were on board the helicopter.
It's coming up and clear now. Clear up. Well, the second astronaut is inside the helicopter, both astronauts inside. 12-1 is clearing the spacecraft.
We were then airlifted out to the Wasp. We landed aboard, and I must say that the Navy was just great. They couldn't have been nicer to us. Of course, everyone's been this way. It was obvious by the way they picked us up and the precision that they accomplished their mission that they were professionals.
From an Air Force man, that's a great testimonial.
When we got back on the carrier, our legs were heavy, and if we had any deterioration at all in the flight, it was the fact that our legs weren't used for 2 weeks, and they did feel stiff, and they were, I wouldn't say uncertain, but they were at least heavy.
The chief symptom, in fact the only symptom which we noticed, was the heaviness of the legs, that's all.
We then were submitted to the, or I should say, I guess, thrown to the doctors, and we recovered 10 hours later in fine shape. However, we came back to the Cape. As a matter of fact, the next morning we were able to ride an exerciser. Before the flight, I was able to go 16 minutes on it, and 18 hours after landing, I was able to go 14 minutes. Muscle deterioration wasn't very bad, and when we got back to the Cape, we resumed our training and were able to run a mile the day we landed back at the Cape.
For the Mission Control Center, Houston, the flight proved a capability to direct and bring together 2 spacecraft at a predetermined point in space, a capability that will be essential to the Apollo lunar mission. The spacecraft were the first to come in under controlled re-entry. Both landed less than 10 miles from their predicted impact points. The accuracy of the landings demonstrated the feasibility of controlled re-entry for Apollo. Both spacecraft were recovered by the carrier Wasp. All objectives of the Gemini 7 and 6 missions were accomplished. For example, the Gemini 7 crew completed the longest manned spaceflight on record, giving the United States an additional 330 hours of manned spaceflight experience. All experiments were performed satisfactorily, including the first use of star sightings to align a spacecraft. The experiment proved the value of celestial navigation as a backup to a spacecraft's inertial guidance system. The flight was also the first in which the flight crew flew much of the mission in a shirt-sleeve environment. The soft suits permitted the crew to remove and stow the garments with relative ease. Of medical importance was the fact that the flight crew remained alert and performed efficiently throughout the 14-day mission. More significantly, post-flight medical examinations demonstrated that the astronauts had no inhibitive physiological effects.
The 14-day mission has shown us that man indeed adapts to the spaceflight environment, that his body does not show changes which increase with his increasing exposure to that environment. The additional data allows us to medically commit man to a lunar mission.
Overall, the Gemini 7 and 6 missions demonstrated a growing precision and flexibility in manned spaceflight operations. Remaining Gemini missions will concentrate on increasing operating proficiency. The first of the 1966 missions will be Gemini 8, scheduled for March.